Good morning, everyone. My name is Estelle Haenel. I am Medical Director at Kayentis, and I am happy to speak with you today about eCOA setup complexities and how we can still ensure successful launch by navigating through these complexities. For the ones who have already been part of an eCOA study setup, who from you never dreamt of a process that would be as simple as choosing a questionnaire, programming it into a software, testing it, and launching the study? That would be very easy, right? The problem is that it's a dream and it never happens, or seldom, let's say, happens this way. Without proper preparation, very strong communication and experience sharing across teams, complexities can make getting the eCOA portion of a study become a headache, if not a nightmare. We will go today through key elements of what can help navigating through these complexities, which we hope will help, especially at those times of uncertainty and of rapid evolution of the way we conduct clinical trials. So it's interesting to see that the study setup experience varies across stakeholders, and the very complexities are not perceived the same way by all users. So where do the main complexities sit? I think the first level of complexity comes from the natural difficulties to face the change. Change can be seen as a risk, and as clinical trials are more and more evolving towards reducing the level of risk we take, teams are tended to proceed in a business as usual mode and to try and do the way we did last time, because it's reassuring to do so. However, it's very important for teams to capitalize on prior experience and to drive a culture of change. It can bring a new way of doing things, and it can promote the success of a study. This leads actually to my second point, which is the experience sharing and the importance of proceeding through key lessons learned exercise. I think we all know that maybe especially in large organizations, sometimes they can be working in silos, and working in silos is quite frequent and breaking the silos is quite hard. But by promoting lessons learned exercise, by driving this experience sharing, by even trying to have a center function who can drive and spread the information, the teams will be more ready for success as advice across the board will spread into the organizations. The next challenge sits in the growing trend of over-complexifying the way we conduct clinical trials. I won't be the one teaching you how complex have become our protocols, the number of outcomes, the choice of questionnaires, the study designs, up until the process that we follow to conduct our clinical studies. One should maybe take a step back here and ask the question to ourselves, is this really right to do so? Is this really needed? Is there any room for me to make this more simple? Those are key questions we need to ask ahead of time before taking all our decisions. Another complexity sits in the fact that we all do all what we can to avoid missing the right input to be brought by the right stakeholders. Missing the right stakeholders can be a risk because it can create more complexity. Originally, bringing the right stakeholders, of course, comes from a very positive goal, which is to make sure everything is represented and that we have the input from data management, we have the insights from statistics, we have the experience from medical, and everything is here to take the right decisions. This is right to do so until it becomes wrong. If a team has too many stakeholders, then the risk of competing priorities or missing the point, delaying a project, or even more can rise. So a clear discussion should happen to make sure all the right stakeholders sit on the table, but only the right stakeholders are there. The next complexity comes also with the difficulty of creating and mastering accurate specifications as it comes to designing the eCOA studies. All the stakeholders who I spoke with when preparing for this presentation confirmed to me that providing very clear, very complete, very precise and undoubtful specifications for programming teams is a challenge that can impact the study start. So again, the right people and the right level of communication ahead of time should happen at the beginning of the study to produce the right specifications. Last but not least, here we will be in the obligation to speak about UAT as we speak about eCOA setup. And for the ones who have experienced this, user acceptance testing is not always a successful experience, and we want to be clear to this. I think it's really worth coming back to the very basic questions of who should be performing user acceptance testing, what it is for, and why it's so important. This statement sounds obvious, but if I'm bringing this here today, it's because from experience, it is not always that obvious. UAT is the one opportunity for the users to test the solution, to try as many options as possible, and to secure that the study intended requirements are fulfilled. And so, as a clinical project manager, as a medical monitor, as a CRA, as a site representative, as a patient, as a site coordinator, all those roles can be played. People can act those roles, right, and test. It should be verified that the way the study was implemented is satisfactory from all those different perspectives. Of course, it happens that teams are not resourced enough or are not don't have the bandwidth or are not experienced for playing all those positions. Then it has to be flagged ahead of time so that with vendors, with additional resources or services, the clinical team in charge can proceed and can have the relevant testings performed ahead of time. All this is fundamental, and I don't think there is a huge debate around that. But what does this precisely mean? How does this UAT, how far does this process go? Should every single situation be verified? Should every single use case be tested? And if one scenario was not covered, then whose responsibility is this? I think we need to take a step back here and stay smart. We have to realize that given the level of complexity of our studies, the complexity of the protocols of what we have that we already mentioned, it is not reasonable to think that we can test 100% of the options. With all the different scores and the ones that are leading to sub-scores calculation, not every single combination can be verified until destruction. This may not be seen as the right use of the different teams' resources. And the recommendation then here is maybe to think ahead of time through the scenarios that need testing according to the specifics of a given patient population, according to a specific patient population that will be recruited at a given site, according to the specifics of a protocol, which will require very important score calculation for, a primary endpoint, or according to the likelihood of occurrence of a situation. I think in the end, we want to make sure that every user can use the system in its own environment and in a way that matches the protocol requirements, which we may be able to summarize as being there to remove ambiguity. And I think that if we can achieve a level where most of the ambiguity have been relieved thanks to those testings, we can say that the UAT process has been successful. In parallel of all this happening at the time of preparing for the eCOA study, clinical teams are doing other things, and they are also planning for the unplanned situation. This year taught us that the unforeseen can quickly come, and maybe more quickly than it was expected. It can even become a new settled situation, and as such, backup plans become key to face the unplanned. From a purely project management perspective, in study setup and eCOA planification, this is key to secure that the adequate eCOA backup solution is selected and that an appropriate deployment strategy is in place. So, how to do this? Implementing the right backup strategy is key, but this raises questions, and I'm trying here to bring some of those questions that can be in our mind. So why choosing an eCOA backup solution can be such a challenging exercise, right? And if it is so challenging, then what are going to be the key criteria to properly select my eCOA backup plan? We want to be thinking patients, of course, patients' experience. Then what can we do to avoid jeopardizing the patient's experience in the clinical trial while still matching the needs of the clinical trials, which are permanently evolving? And are the different data capture backup strategies made to cover all situations, even the unexpected ones? And in the end, if my eCOA backup strategy must become a new normal, then how robust does my solution need to be? And what does robust precisely mean? So we're going to try and decipher a little bit of those different questions. How can I choose my backup solution? I think here, as much as in every other aspect of clinical trials development and research, we need to be thinking patients first. Patients are becoming at the heart of every single thing we do now, and it's not only at the time of protocol design or questionnaire selection that we should think of them, but it's of course at the time of also choosing the way the data are going to be collected. Why that? Of course, because of the burden for the patients. We need to think of a backup solution that must be quick, that must be easy to set up, to access, and to use. And it's going, of course, to reduce the patient burden as much as possible, but also for the sites who are the best partners for our patients, as we know, and we'll come back to this. It's also because our patient population are usually not that homogeneous. Even with the narrow key inclusion and exclusion criteria, patient population can vary a lot. They can be very different in their age, in their agility with technology, given their health condition, not always the same. So we need to take care of these aspects as well when we think of the eCOA backup solution. And also, as I was saying, it's for our patients, but also for our sites. We know they are the best partners of the patients, and if the sites find the solution easy, if the sites are well trained, if the sites are well explained, this eCOA backup solution, then the likelihood of success at the site level will be cascaded and will be probably, introducing a good chance of success with our patients, of course. We also have to bear in mind that sites have paid a significant price this year with the pandemic. Continuing clinical trials, maintaining visits has been extremely difficult. And I think we have to think through being the ones helping now and thinking our solutions towards bringing support and help to the users. Of course, as it comes to offering another option of collecting data, we think of data quality. And whatever happens, whatever the satisfaction of our patients, it's probably and it will likely never be at the compromise of data quality. Someone who I discussed with recently told me, if you're only thinking patients, then you can easily throw them a piece of paper and they will be happy to use this as a backup option. But we all know that would be very dangerous. So although we keep the patients at the heart of our discussions, clinical team will never put themselves in a situation to put data quality as a compromise. With data quality comes also robustness, and we mentioned that earlier. What does this precisely mean for my eCOA backup solution to be robust? Is this a solution that secures full data integrity? Is this a solution that is QA certified? Is this an option that can cover every single situation, from a broken device to an international pandemic that prevents the patients to reach the sites? Is this solution that encompasses a very solid deployment strategy, which is also part of the solution? Again, here we need to take a step back, think through what the words mean, think through what they encompass in terms of expectations at the clinical team level, and agree on what this means before making. In the end comes here the discussion around equivalence. Again, when we speak about implementing a backup option, of course, comes the discussion about equivalence. It has generated a lot of publications, of course, in the literature since decades now. What does this precisely mean as well? Equivalence will not mean the same for a patient, for a data manager, and probably not for a regulatory agency. Here again, discuss equivalence expectations, make sure it means the same for all the different stakeholders in charge, and come back to the type of data you're collecting and which level of equivalence is required as regards to the data we collect for a single purpose. The message I want you to keep at home, since most of us are at home, so it's not a message you're going to be bringing at home, but maybe keeping for you. eCOA setup is not a straightforward process, and as we said, it can be more of a headache than of a dream. But with all what we've covered today, I think we can think that with compiling lessons learned, with driving openness to change, and with driving key experience sharing, together with choosing wisely the stakeholders who need to sit on the table, and anticipating and planning for a thorough UAT process, which we have seen may not have to be 100% exhaustive in terms of combinations possible. With making the eCOA backup solution decision being very strategic, looking at exactly, what we want to do with it, and keeping the patients at the heart of our decisions, we could potentially reduce the level of complexities and secure a successful study launch. But I think a question that is in our mind, and if not, that should always stay in our mind, is why am I doing this? What do I collect this data for? Thank you for your attention.